Peacemaker Ministries is a ministry. It's an it's an interdenominational, but it's also international ministry that goes all over the world. Everyone about biblical peacemaking. I found out about this ministry in 1999. Their concept stayed in the Bible. They taught well. Their teachers were amazing. It isn't a form of a ministry that didn't fit for the Adventist church. And so when I was asked to be one of the trainers for them, I just reached out and said I would, because I felt that I could take it to the, and that's how I got involved in. Also, part of it, training was to become a conciliator, and so for almost 4 years they put me through training to become a certified Christian. What's wrong? Well, then I'm going to use this one. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, and I'll try to stay still because I tend to move when I talk. That's why they were giving me that, so I'll try to stay in front of this. Anyway, back to, so when Mark came into my life, he came into a life that was my passion for teaching peacemaking. And so he's embraced it. Not sure that that was something that he would have gotten into had he not met me. But Mark also went through some of the training that they teach with conflict coaching and mediation. So together we make a really good team, and we are striving to bring it to the Adventist church as much as possible. The book, The Peacemaker by Ken Sande, came out in the 1990s, I believe. Ken Sande was an attorney, a Christian attorney, that believed that there was more to life than taking everything to court. And so he wrote this book. It's a very in-depth study, okay? So if you like what we're teaching today and want to further study it, this book is excellent. You can find it on Amazon. But he wrote this book and came up with this concept. Hobby Lobby loved the concept, but to teach this to their employees was just too overwhelming. So you know Hobby Lobby is a Christian organization, and they wanted to come up with a concept that was easier for their employees to read. So they asked Ken Sande to make it in a smaller book for people to understand in the everyday life, and he called it Resolving Everyday Conflict. It is an overview of the larger book. The larger book has a lot of information, like in Bible text, keeping in the Bible the whole time. This kind of is more for the everyday life of employees, whether you're a Christian or not. It is written so that you understand the concept, because we all have values. And if you don't have Christian values, you still have moral values, and this book fit. So Hobby Lobby did this with the understanding that they were taking this concept with what Ken Sande had done. So today, Mark and I are presenting the Resolving Everyday Conflict in the smaller level. We do teach a more in-depth one. We will be doing it this summer for Pennsylvania camp meeting. And it is a 5-day training class where you're coming to us for about an hour and a half every day in a seminar and going through this larger book. But we're going to make it fun. We're not going to get stuck in all the details, but an overview for you to understand how to use conflict in your everyday life. So if we'll bow our heads, I'd like to have prayer before we start. Father, we thank you so much for opportunities, and we and I and Mark hope that we can bring this and present it through your word and through your Holy Spirit coming in to our lives and helping us teach the concept that we can deal with conflict with you in our life, with biblical principles, and we ask that you be with us here in this room. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for coming and going through this seminar. Our seminar is divided into 8 sessions. I'll be teaching this first one. Mark is going to be teaching the second one this morning for Sabbath school. The third one will be taught during church, and I will do that. And then this afternoon after potluck, if you like what has been said for the first, second, and third one, we encourage you to stay and get the last 5. Along with that, this afternoon, I have these books that I'd like to give to the afternoon people that stay, that go through the whole 8 sessions, so that what we tell you, you can have at your fingertips when you get home, and so you won't forget it. Conflict is everywhere. Now, when I say the word conflict, how do you feel? This is Sabbath school, so I need to hear some feedback, okay? How do you feel when I say the word conflict? Yeah. Yes. Good. Some people are afraid. Some people ignore it. Some people don't even want that in their life. But every one of you in this room has at some point in your life had to deal with conflict. Why? And it's because conflict started in heaven through Satan and God, and it will not end until Jesus comes again. So with Satan being such a big part of our lives here on earth, he is not going to allow us to live in a peaceful world. It will always have conflict around us. What we are assured, though, is that with Bible principles, we can be assured that we can have peace in our heart. Because if we let God into our conflicts, they change. I would have never believed that if I didn't practice it now. But we can allow God to give us the peace we need in our hearts as long as we're following his principles, being obedient to him, and glorifying him in everything that we do and say. So remember, conflict is a normal part of life. And as long as you live and interact with people, you're going to find your opinions and actions bumping up against someone else's. And you know, that's all it is. When there is conflict in this world, it's not that we're angry with each other. We're angry with the fact that their opinion or their action or their difference is different than ours. And when we look at it as it's just a difference of opinion, we can then back up and realize, what do we need to do to change our attitude toward the conflict that's happening in our relationships? It affects our marriages. It affects our families, our churches, our friendships, and especially our work environments. But you know what? As Christians, it tarnishes our witness to a watching world. I'm going to next show a short video, and it's a kitchen scene, and I want you to watch the conflict that's raging around it.
Hey.
I'm trying to decide what to do for vacation this year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. What do you think we should do?
Good question. I was thinking this summer it would be a good idea if we went to visit my parents. We haven't seen them in a while.
No, the problem is that's not a break for me. Yeah, your parents are hard work, especially your mom. I want to relax. I want to go to the beach.
I mean, seriously, if we don't go see them, they can't come see us. They can't travel. It'll be another year before the kids see them.
I get 2 weeks off for vacation. That's it.
I'm aware.
I want to use it to I want to go to the beach. What's the problem?
Yeah, but we went to the beach last year
Yeah.
because of the same reason.
Yeah, and we got to relax. We got to take it easy. That's what I'm talking about.
That's not what I meant. And you know that. Yes, the beach was fun. We all had a great time, but my father is not going to be around forever. And I don't want to feel like I missed this opportunity to spend time with him. I don't know why we always have to go through this. I wish you could just think about what I need or what the kids need, and it wasn't just always about you.
Really?
Really.
So I'm selfish. I'm working 60 hours a week, okay? To pay for all these vacations, all this stuff that we do, so you can make all the decisions? Really? Is that how it's going to work? I'm just some big ATM. I'm going to throw money all over the place so you can make all the decisions. Yeah, go ahead and call me selfish. That makes a lot of sense. I'm selfish.
I cannot take this anymore. Like, taking care of the house and the kids, like, that's not a real job? You know, and I work part-time. I pull my share. If it's that important to you to have a break, you should take one. Go to the beach. Call your golf buddies. Do whatever you want. And I'll take the kids and we'll go see my dad.
I want to take a family vacation. Family vacation. I want to see my kids. I want to spend time with my kids.
Well-
Care about this family as much as you care about your parents. That's what you need to be doing. We're right here. Us.
That is so unfair. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
You know what?
You're right.
You do whatever you want. I'm going to bed.
You do that. I'm going to watch a movie.
Please do not do that.
Good night. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night. Why does it always have to be this hard? Whatever.
So, I know we have, we kept turning this down when they got louder and turning it up, so I apologize for that, because if we had left it the way we videoed it, you would have heard the anger. It would have been very loud at times, and I want you to realize that's what some kitchens look like in this life. And in fact, I can be honest, my kitchen looks like that at times. I forget what I'm supposed to do, even though I know what I'm supposed to do, because we argue about our wants, our desires, our needs, and forgetting what the other person's differences are. In the book entitled Conflict Ministry in the Church, on page 36, it says, conflict occurs most often in congregations in which there is a deep commitment to the church. That should tell you something. Satan hates deep commitment to God's way. And so the deeper the commitment you are to God and your church, the more conflict you're going to have that are raging around you. The deeper our commitment to our church, our marriages, our careers, our families, our friends, the more conflict we are going to have. The great news is that there is a better way of dealing with conflict, and it is because of what Jesus did for us and his reconciling work in us, being reconciled with God. There is hope for broken relationships and hope for those destructive patterns to be broken. The differences in our relationships are normal and natural, but the way we deal with these differences will change. They move from being destructive to glorifying God and becoming constructive. Peacemaking has made a difference in my own life. But do I still have conflict? Yes. I still have lots of challenges because of this selfishness that's in my heart. I know what I need to do. I'm trained to coach you through a destructive conflict. I'm trained to teach biblical principles. And I'm lucky to be married to Mark, who has gone through this same training too. And even though with that much knowledge between the two of us, we don't do conflict right. But we now have the tools, and so we just keep practicing. So I'm going to go through what an anatomy of a conflict looks like. And just to let you know, Mark and my background is medical, so that's why we call it an anatomy of a conflict. Mark is a physician here in Westminster. For those of you that didn't know that, I do medical. I run a group of doctors, dermatology in the Ellicott City area. And so we're going to break down what a conflict really is so that you know the inner actions of a conflict and what it looks like. First, there is a spark. So what are some sparks? Let's talk about the God-given sparks. They're God-given diversities. Number one, God created us male and female. And honestly, that in itself can cause a difference of opinion. Males and females think differently, and I'm so glad we do, because we complete the picture of what God truly is. The second spark can be misunderstandings or miscommunications. I can say something to Mark and think he totally understands what I'm trying to say. And unless he asks questions or unless I ask for clarity, he might totally think that I'm talking about something else just because he's not focused on what I'm saying, and I can do the same to him. So misunderstandings or miscommunications causes sparks in our relationships. And the last one is sinful attitudes or desires. This afternoon, right after potluck, I'm going to dig deeper into that because those are heart issues. Our sinful desires becomes our heart issues. And that's probably the last one of the sparks. Well, you get the spark, and then there are triggers. These are just the triggers to what can cause conflict. And we pour on gasoline. Our problem starts with how we respond to these differences. The root problem in conflict is desires taking place in our heart. So let's read James 4:1. It says, "What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war against you or within you?" It's the desires of our heart that's the gasoline that gets poured on that spark. And we're going to walk through what to do about that and what it looks like. A desire that we are willing to fight to get. This desire, we are going to learn, can be sinful desires and even good desires. Can you believe that? That gasoline that we pour can be a good desire first. And we'll tell you more about that this afternoon after lunch too. So we pour gas on that spark. So I know everyone in this room can tell me what happens to that spark when gasoline is poured on it. Well, it ends up in explosive fires. Thousands leave churches. They leave their jobs. They leave their friends, their families, their marriages, and their neighborhoods because of unresolved conflict. Interesting enough, people, I employ a number of employees. And it's interesting that if they're having trouble at work, they think just changing jobs is going to work and they're going to find a better peace in some other job. But what happens if they don't figure out what's causing the conflict where they're working, they're going to take that same conflict to the next job. That's the same thing that happens in churches. We tend to think that I'm not having a good church life, I'm going to move to a different church. What happens is we take that same conflict to the next church if you don't resolve it. Our marriages, we think that changing husbands or wives are going to make the difference, and it doesn't. We take that same bad, sinful desire to the next marriage. Or we'll move out of a neighborhood because we don't like the neighbors around us, and we go into a different neighborhood and take that same conflict. So until we deal with the unresolved issues that are around us, our whole life continues to grow in the same direction. So we're going to teach you today how to stop this, how to change this, and it's through one thing, and that there is hope. How important is our relationships? Well, Jesus says in Matthew 22 to love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. You know, Jesus makes it clear that he wants us to enjoy healthy relationships. And God would never promise us love and healthy relationships if he didn't also give us a path to get there. Our relationships are our greatest evangelistic tool. His plan, God's plan, an answer for our relationships, it isn't to try harder. It isn't just to be nice. It isn't just to try to get along. The power does not come from knowing the command to love each other, but from another source. The power comes from understanding how God first extended this to us, and we call this the gospel. The good news of God's mercy and pardoning love for us through the death and resurrection of him and of Jesus. I want to change your thinking about conflict to where you start embracing the conflicts of your Christian life. You know, when I was told I need to embrace conflict, that was not a very good feeling. Because if you're a person, and we're going to talk about this, in fact, I'm not sure which section it is in, but we're going to talk about people who escape, or is it your next session? Okay, Mark's going to bring to you the next session about people who run away from conflict or people who attack conflict. And you're going to put yourself, you're going to think, which one of those is me? And when I was told that I needed to embrace conflict, I'm thinking, no, why would I want to do that? Well, we do. We want to, because we want to use conflict. It's Satan's destructive tool as an opportunity. I want you to turn, for those of you that came in, you should have gotten one of these. In Peacemaker Ministries, and this is the time when I walk around, so I've got to make my feet stay still, okay? In Peacemaker Ministries, we call this little brochure, and I absolutely keep it in my Bible at all times, because it just has all the information at your fingertips. And when you get a chance to spend time reading through it, maybe, you'll realize how much information is in this little brochure. Peacemaker Ministries calls this the Peacemaker's Swiss Army knife. You know, a Swiss Army knife has everything that you need in one little tool. Well, this does too. So I keep it in my Bible at all times. Okay, so I want you to open up to the middle. You're going to see a coffee cup. Now, this is a coffee cup, but in the Adventist church, I call it my hot chocolate cup, okay? So under the hot chocolate cup, right down in the middle of the paragraph, we're going to read, and it starts out, we also believe that conflict provides opportunities to glorify God, serve other people, and grow to be like Christ. So it is our goal today that Mark and I teach you how to use conflict, that's Satan's tool, as an opportunity to glorify God, to serve each other, and to grow to have a character more like Jesus's. We aren't spiritual supermen and superwomen praying our way out of every argument. I don't pull out my Bible, although sometimes I would like to when Mark and I are in conflict, and sit there and say, okay, you know what James says? James says it causes fights and quarrels among you. My heart, your heart. I want to do that sometimes, but we don't do that. We do that in other ways. That's not what it's like when you're using these tools. And I want to show you what it looks like. We are going to watch that same kitchen scene, only this time they are going to use tools like glorifying God, serving each other, and having the Christian character of Jesus. Watch for this in this same scene you saw before. Watch it again.
Hey there.
Hey.
So I'm trying to decide what to do for vacation this year.
Oh, yeah?
What do you think we should do?
Good question. I was actually thinking that this year we could go see my folks. We haven't seen them in a while. Well, what do you think?
I think we should go to the beach again this year. I want to relax. We had a good time last year. It's fun. If we go see your folks, your mom. Work's been hard this year. This has been just a tough year, and we go to your parents and we'll be able to relax. I want to go to the beach.
I know, okay? I know it's been a rough year, especially because of work, and I know you need to relax, and if my mom's around, you can't always do that, but you know how sick my dad is. I mean, I really thought this would be the perfect opportunity for our whole family to go and spend some quality time with him while we can.
I know how important it is to see your dad. And I know we don't have much more time with him. All right, well, I wonder if we should do that. Okay, yeah. Yeah, let's do that.
Well, I don't want you to not get the break that you need. I mean, the beach was great for our whole family last year. I just wish you got longer than 2 weeks.
What if you take the kids and you go see your folks? You
But
take
the
them for a
whole
week?
point-
No, hold on. And then the last couple days I come up, and then after that we can take the kids to the beach for a week. I mean, it's kind of choppy, but I think it works.
Yeah, I think it sounds great.
Okay, you get to spend quality time with your dad. We get to take the kids to the beach and relax, and I only have to see your mom for a couple of days. As long as you're good for being away a few weeks, then it's good for everybody.
Yes, I think this sounds like the perfect solution. This is really important to me. I appreciate it. Hey, I'm gonna head up to bed. You coming?
Yeah, I guess so.
Was there still conflict there? There was a difference of opinion. And you saw them stop, not yell, kind of give that moment of thinking it through, the next thing that was going to come out of their mouths. And yet you saw them get to a point where they weren't really compromising, but they both were getting the, what do I want to say, the situation was going to work out for both of them. And so you didn't feel like either one of them gave up anything that they would regret later. They got to a point where they both agreed. You know, my life is beginning to look more like that second video. And we are going to learn that if we use conflict God's way, we will learn how to change the course when our sparks start flying. Now I'm going to turn the next session over to my husband, Mark.
Good morning. Are we on? We're good. So I'm going to play a video. Then I want you to pay close attention to the words in this video, because this is a person who has no hope.
The conflicts that rage all around us can't be solved by the cross, and I do not believe I will find peace in my own life. My problems are too big for Jesus. I refuse to believe that churches can be reconciled and come to live in peace, but it's because of God we fight and quarrel. It's happening all around the world. It's what happened in Northern Ireland. Yes, that's what happened in my church. Can people who hate each other ever come to be reconciled? The gospel doesn't change things. Only a fool believes the reckless promise of God that there's real hope in this broken world. This is what I believe.
That sounds kind of depressing, doesn't it? We don't want to feel that way about our future, do we? When I was introduced by Donna to peacemaking, I came to learn about something called the slippery slope. Now, there's a picture in your brochure of a slippery slope, and on the slippery slope, if we look to the right side, we have what's called the attack responses. On the left side are the escape responses. We all have natural tendencies with our own personalities of whether we're an escaper or an attacker. And the goal of today's conference with us is to learn how to resolve conflicts in a godly way, which is at the top of the slope, where we have what we like to refer to as the 4 G's, and they're rather in order of how we approach conflict, or should approach conflict, which is glorify God or go to higher ground. The second is to get the log out of our own eye, or get real with ourselves. The third is to go and be, or to gently restore, also to gently engage. And the fourth is to go and be reconciled or get together. The initial version of Peacemaker used the more biblical terms, and as Donna said, when Hobby Lobby became involved, they're trying to open it up to people who may not be of church mind, and they may not know some of those terms. So within our own lives, we know that we're usually an escaper or an attacker. And another way to look at that is as animals. And an escaper we think of as a turtle, because what does a turtle do when he is involved with conflict? He pulls into his shell, enters his own little world, and isn't wanting to interact with anyone. And on the other side is, we call it the skunk. It's a visual of someone, when a skunk is attacked, he starts tapping his feet and chattering, and soon he's spraying mess all over the place with a bad odor. And, within our own marriages, it's very true that opposites attract. And within your own marriage, quite likely one of you is an escaper and one's an attacker. Do we have any escapers in the crowd that are generally like to escape conflict? How about attackers? Any attackers that are in the crowd? I know within our own marriage, we fall within those categories, and you may learn as the day progresses which one is the attacker and which one is the escaper. And I won't name any names of who's who with that. So we can use this slippery slope as a roadmap as we approach our conflict. We're going to break down the 4 G's, so-called, during the course of the day. One aspect of escape is responses are denial or running. If you're in denial, you're pretending your conflict doesn't exist. Or if you're running, you're in flight, running away from your conflict. Extreme cases involve leaving your friendships, your marriages, your churches. Well, what's the problem with escaping? Well, we haven't really solved anything, have we? The root issue causing the problem continues to follow us wherever we go. And when you deny or pretend an issue isn't there, it eventually will explode in your face. The focus of attack responses is usually winning, trying to win something, and it looks like blaming. We focus on the other person. It comes out in gossip or slander against others, or we assault by using the weapons of the tongue and intimidating our opponent with our words. Well, what about the godly responses? What are the godly responses of peacemaking? Again, we refer to them as the 4 G's, and we're going to be talking about these the rest of the day and breaking them down. Glorifying God, getting the log out, gently restore, and go and be reconciled. In God's way, we ultimately focus on reconciliation of the relationship and then work out a mutual resolution of the issue. God doesn't focus on issues, he focuses on the relationships. These 4 G's or 4 principles are not just clever thinking, but they're biblical principles. They're derived from the Bible. Remember, in conflict, we can't really think straight. These 4 G's help us to have wisdom and practical principles to apply. Before we get started by breaking the 4 G's down in detail, let's read Proverbs 19:11. Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is in his glory to overlook an offense. So the first question to ask yourself in a conflict is this something that I should overlook? A very good sign of Christian maturity is to be less sensitive to how others treat us and more sensitive to how we treat them. Overlooking minor offenses from others should be considered when dealing with conflict. But there is a word of caution. Those of us who tend to be escapers could fall into an escaping mode when we're overlooking an offense. Now, there's some guidelines for you who tend to escape to know, is this something that should be overlooked? Is this a conflict or an offense that should be overlooked? And there's some principles to look at to decide if it's something you can overlook. Number 1, if your relationship isn't hurting because of the offense. What I mean by this is if you're not ignoring your fears or your honesty in your relationship. Number 2, the offense or conflict will not harm someone. Number 3, the offense or conflict is not part of a destructive pattern. If this is something you do over and over, then it may be something to reconsider. Number 4, the offense or conflict isn't harmful to glorifying God, which is our original principle. We'll respond to others the same way God responds to us. Earlier, we stopped the video that I showed you halfway through with the words of hopelessness. I'm going to play the entire video again and let you see how our approach, or a Christian approach, should be.
The conflicts that rage all around us can't be solved by the cross, and I do not believe I will find peace in my own life. My problems are too big for Jesus. I refuse to believe that churches can be reconciled and come to live in peace, but it's because of God we fight and quarrel. It's happening all around the world. It's what happened in Northern Ireland. Yes, that's what happened in my church. Can people who hate each other ever come to be reconciled? The gospel doesn't change things. Only a fool believes the reckless promise of God that there's real hope in this broken world. This is what I believe. This is what I believe, that there's real hope in this broken world, the reckless promise of God. Only a fool believes the gospel doesn't change things. People who hate each other ever come to be reconciled? Yes, that's what happened in my church. It's what happened in Northern Ireland. It's happening all around the world. We fight and quarrel, but it's because of God that churches can be reconciled and come to live in peace. I refuse to believe that my problems are too big for Jesus. I will find peace in my own life, and I do not believe the conflicts that rage all around us can't be solved by the cross.
Isn't that amazing? What makes the difference? It's our perspective. It's God's power in us, isn't it? It's amazing. We begin to see how the gospel remakes our lifestyles and our relationships. The gospel is God's power. God intends for the gospel to completely transform every area of our daily lives. Knowing the truth about the gospel is not enough. It says in James that even the demons know and believe the truth. Each person must personally receive the grace of God, the gift of forgiveness of sin, by believing in the work of Jesus on the cross in their behalf. If our lives are truly transformed and we live the gospel, then we know that living in the gospel means, 1, God loves me. 2, God accepts me just like I am. 3, God is working in me to transform me into Christ's likeness. And 4, I'm willing to be open and honest about my sins. Peacemakers see conflict as an opportunity to solve problems in a way that not only benefits everyone involved, but also honors God. Thank you.
So this is Sabbath school, and that's the first 2 sessions. We still have several minutes, and I don't know if there's questions right now that you would love to ask on what we've taught so far, or even what's going to go on. Yes?
I realized that I had loved that woman and wanted to marry her from the start, and I didn't want to lose her, so she was always right after that.
Aw, that's a sweet story. I want to share with you just on a personal basis. Mark's dad was a doctor also, and I didn't get to meet him until he was really along in life. He was in his 80s and no longer practicing medicine, although I will tell you that doctors never stop being doctors. So he was very much a part of my life as far as another doctor's opinion. It was during this time that he first met me that, I don't know if you realized, I'm the skunk, okay, in our relationship. So I'm going to stomp my feet and try to get my way if there is conflict in my life. Mark's dad was probably an escaper. I'm not really, he could be a skunk at times, but he probably more tendency was to escape. And I love the story he told me that he did the same thing with me, because he would argue with me. That was his favorite thing to do, because I would bring out a point and he would argue with me that I was wrong. And then he'd start reading and he'd go, but he would never come and say, okay, I read it. Because I get a medical journal too, and so I'd bring up a new point that I had read, and he goes, where did you read that? And what's interesting, before he died, I was taking him to a doctor one day, and he goes, Donna, I learned that if I read more, you did bring me to light on some of the new medical insights, And he didn't have to say, I was wrong when I argued with you, but it was the way he approached me that knew that he at least saw my difference of opinion from his. And it's a sweet memory that I have of him. We don't always have to say the words, I'm sorry, but when our attitude changes, the other person recognizes the I'm sorry without the words. Because you can say, and we'll teach you later on this afternoon, you can quickly say I'm sorry, but your attitude doesn't change. I would rather the attitude change than to hear the words I'm sorry. So good point. I love that. Someone had their hand up here.
My question is, even if you do loan all these tomes to just one person and you're assuming both people know about the peace conflict, how do you solve an issue if the other person does not know all these issues, but if you try to be the peacemaker, but the other person does not know about the peacemaking? Do you try to teach them? I mean, how do you do that with someone who is conflicting with the peacemaking process?
I think you'll run into all sorts of people when you're in conflict. It may be someone at work that's not a Christian. It might be someone in the church. It might be your husband or wife. And you have to approach each person at a different level. If they're a Christian and they have the same sort of background that you do, you can use a lot of these principles that we're learning today to reach their heart. If it's a person who's not a Christian, there's still principles, there's still a level of higher morality that most people will understand that you can touch their being and their heart with. That's part of the newer approach that peacemaking has been trying to take with some of the language that they use. Instead of glorifying God, in other words, they use go to higher ground. So maybe it's a person who doesn't know God or believe in God, but you can still appeal to that level. So you have to approach each person at whatever level they're at, I think.
I want to also add, where does conflict end? Does it end by trying to get the other person to change their mind? It doesn't. Conflict ends within yourself. You have to start with you. If you come to peace with glorifying God, and we're going to learn that, I'll do that during church. We're going to approach the first G during church. If you start there, it doesn't matter if the other person ever gets there. Now it does in God's eyes, because nothing is reconciled, and God is a God of reconciliation, so he wants it to be complete. But we're going to teach you later on this afternoon also that there are two types of forgiveness, one between you and God, and the other one between you and the other person. The first step you have to take is within yourself and between you and God. I'm going to introduce to you, and I'm sure everybody knows, Eli. He has a question, but I'd like to invite him up here, because during this question and answer time, he also has the training I have and Mark has. So I would like you to join us up here to answer some of these questions and to ask your question or make your statement, whatever one you want to do.
Well, I wanted to ask you the question, because I realized that the skunk doesn't know that it's the skunk, right? And
No.
the turtle doesn't know that it's the turtle.
Oh, so true.
So how do you help someone realize how they're dealing with conflict? I have people say, well, that's the way I am. And so because that's the way they are, they feel that if they don't express themselves that way, then they are hiding who they are, or they're not being true to their nature. So how do you help someone discover that?
It's a great question, because I want to tell you that so I think, Eli, you're a conciliator, you're certified. We are both certified, and in order to be certified Christian conciliator, Peacemaker Ministries has an extensive program that we have to stay certified every year. And we have to have case studies. And so between he and I'm sure we have enough case studies to say that we do need to find the personality of the person. We have to get to how do they approach conflict. Now, if I can do this without getting emotionally attached to this, in the huge book Peacemaker, it talks about the extreme cases of attack and escape. So when I get to a person that I'm dealing with and I can probably figure out which one they're dealing with in conflict, it is wrong for me to say, you're a skunk. I don't know that you are, but it's wrong for me to say that because that person may not believe it. He may not believe that he's attacking. He may be thinking he's doing God's work. So I have to approach it to where they come to the conclusion of who and how they can approach conflict to. And it's by asking questions. We've learned that the more questions we ask, to where a person has to think through their thoughts. Okay, so in an extreme case of escaping, we did not tell you what it is, but I think you could probably figure out. People who extremely escape life and conflict, can anybody tell me what you think happens? I'm sorry. They do. It comes in suicide. Now for me, I didn't really know what that meant. And interesting enough, God has allowed me to experience the extreme cases. And so I know the feeling it feels when you didn't get to somebody. My brother committed suicide when he was 50 years old. So I'm not talking about years ago when he was a teenager. I'm talking about just a few years ago. I lived 15 minutes from him. I talked to him all the time. Had no idea that he was escaping life. So it's very, very important to me that when you have friends and family and coworkers or church members that are trying to escape conflict and ignore what's going on instead of getting it to the point where it's reconciled, I am passionate about telling you that you need to especially get it to a point where it can get reconciled or where God can work, because that's what happens. Now that you know that side, what happens in extreme cases of attacking? You want to murder somebody. And we do that. Remember, James says, how do we murder people? And not only physically murder people, but we do murder people by their integrity, with words, with our words. Yeah, we do that. And it's sad that we can be Christians or call ourselves Christians and we're hurting our brothers and sisters, our spouses, our children, our coworkers. So I'm sure you have an opinion on what your answer was.
Just recently, I wanted to add to that last part. The case was settled there was a man couple of years ago, a man that shot another guy on a movie theater. I don't know if you remember, in Florida.
Yes.
And so I had not heard the details of it at the beginning, so now they reported on the results of it. And it all happened because the man in front of him was texting using his phone. Something like that was going on. When he turned around, they didn't listen to the man that said, shut that down, threw some popcorn at him. And the reaction was he went, got his gun, and killed him. You know, and how sad it is when you have to deal with the consequences of an extreme situation like that.
That's a good point.
But I think it's also important to highlight that we're looking at the extremes, and that's very important. But in the way to that extreme, what can happen? And one of the signs for someone, for instance, that is trying to evade, to run away from conflict is addictive behaviors.
Amen.
Whether it is drinking, drugs, or other type of habits or addictive behaviors, that what they do is, you see the conflict coming to you, so what you do is you run to that. It can be food.
Yes.
It can be
It's
food. It can
true.
be anything that you use to make yourself feel better and not confront the situation. We don't have to be skunks, but we don't need to be turtles either.
You're right.
And we need to find that balance. It's very important.
That's great. That's great.
And basically help them, or even spiritually, like there's some people who lack spirituality, and it's usually when we break in one of those areas, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, that we need help in, because all those parts of a personality become affected because of that one weakness that we have.
One thing I have to say is that all conflicts are certainly not alike, and I was blessed because I knew how hard it was for me to get my wife and marry her. So that offset everything else in my life, and as a matter of fact, we were married for 60 years.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Would you like to comment on the first two sessions?
I know, thank you.
You're good?
You guys have done a great job.
So
Thank
good,
you.
far so good. Thank you. We can give you a break now. We just are really happy to be here and to share with you this. You'll feel and hear a little bit of personal testimony between all of us. Hopefully,
and-
Mark, okay, go ahead.
Mark, hi.
Hey,
Mark and Donna, really pleased to have you here today.
Thank you.
And I know it's God's appointment that you're here, because I remember when we were at the Atherton Church, we were there. I enjoyed the session so much. I came back to my church. I presented the matter to the church board, and they turned it down. So now this is the appointed time. So glad you're here, and welcome. And I know
Thank
we'll
you.
be tremendously blessed today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there was conflict about a conflict
Yeah,
management
that
program.
is. That's cute. That is so true. So we will, I don't know if the people that are in charge of Sabbath school had more things that need to happen during Sabbath school. I know in our Sabbath school, we passed around the envelope. Did that get passed around? I don't want to miss that. So we can break now.
Thank you so much.